Hello and welcome to The Stack. Today I'm taking you to sunny climates. The wonderful Spanish design title Manera launches a Mexico edition. Brilliant. And then you'll be wanting to pack your bags to the Greek island of Hydra, as we have some interesting print offers from the island. Enjoy the show. From Midori House in London, this is The Stack, 30 minutes of print industry analysis, and I am Fernando Augusto Pacheco. Back in 2022, former AD España, Enric Pastor, launched the stunning and hefty Manera magazine. And 8 issues after, the title is going strong as ever, especially now with the launch of Manera México, their new title helmed by María Alcocer. The first issue looks at amazing design, architecture and art from not only Mexico, but also Peru, Colombia and Brazil. I particularly love the attention given to brutalism in the first issue. It was a pleasure to speak with Enric Pastor in Madrid and María Alcocer in Mexico City.
We are almost 2 years old. And it's amazing because I think people are thinking that we're like very established magazines with a heritage of years and years. And I don't know why, but I think that it's because that we decide just reflecting this good moment and this emotion that everybody's feeling about interiors, and especially about Spain and Latin America. That's what we're focusing. So we're seeing a lot of readers and professionals from abroad, from Europe and from the US, that are getting a lot of inspiration about the contents we're offering. So, I mean, we decided to take this angle to be very local in Spain and at the same time to build a bridge to Latin America, just to offer this amazing architecture and interior design that it's taking place there, especially in Mexico, Colombia, Brazil, Chile, and many other countries, that it's very different from the approach that all the European designers are taking. It's very craft interiors. They're very emotional, full of colors. And I think this is because we're having a reputation in such a short time in magazines. So we're very happy about that.
And Maria, great talking to you as well. You're in charge of Manera México, and I have the first issue in front of me. It's a thing of beauty. First of all, tell us, how did you meet Enric? How did this project came about? Because it's such, Enric always told me, I remember when he launched the magazine, he was telling me that Manera originally is not just a Spanish magazine. The connection with Latin America would be very strong. And here you go. We have an issue it's in Mexico. That's super exciting.
Yes, it's very exciting. I mean, I met Enric like 14 years ago or 13 when we were in AD. So now that we are out of that world of AD and Condé Nast, so we decided to make this project to be real in Mexico and Spain. It's very important to have, for the last years in Mexico, it's been like a real gap in the editorial industry and the architecture and design guild. So I talked to Enric and I thought, it's very important to have these kind of projects in Mexico and Latin America. We have to fill this gap. And I think we can do it hand by hand with Manera, right? So for me, it's very important and very exciting to finally have Manera in Mexico. We launched Manera in mid-April. So we just sent to print the second issue that will be out from July to September. So I think it's been very exciting to see the readers, the audience, the commercial partners to get to see Manera and discover a whole new world in how you perceive your home, your spaces, the design, the Latin American design, the craftsmanship, Mexico, how you see Mexico in different perspectives, and also of Latin America, as Enric says, Colombia, Chile, Argentina, Peru. Like, it's very important for Latin American markets to see their own projects and design, interior design, which is a very rich continent in this matter.
It's very punchy, and I think, you rightly said that it was about time, because Mexico, there's such a strong craftsmanship, there's such an importance to design. And let's be honest, a lot of people, they want to either move to Mexico or they want to travel there. So clearly it's interesting that now you have, a magazine that can speak to all those people, perhaps not necessarily only the locals, other people in Latin America too, right?
Exactly. I mean, Mexico is one of the most visited countries in the world. So by its iconic architecture, its authentic design, and its one-of-a-kind and beautiful craftsmanship. So through our pages, our readers are able to breathe, to appreciate, and to enjoy the richness of our culture. I always say that Mexico has the soul of an artisan, Also, you can think of this in regards to Latin America. Mexico has a culture as rich as it is millenarian. It is built by revolutionary minds with artisanal hands. So today we are seeing an ambitious creative generation with a deep love and respect for its pre-Hispanic roots. So as I just said, it's for Mexico, but also for Colombia, for Peru, for Venezuela, for Brazil. So I think it's very important to feature these kind of stories in Manera for our audience in Latin America, and also for Spain and the other readers that we have in the US, in Europe.
And Enric, I want to talk to you about how will those two different titles, will they share content? Because they do live in the same world as well, right? So please let me know, because Manera, the 8th issue also is out, which is incredible. But tell us about how will those titles relate to each other?
The thing with the Mexican edition was very natural because from the beginning we were working together, María and I, just offering content of both locations. So when we decided to launch Mexico, María was working with that, but we think that Mexico had to have a very strong editor-in-chief there. So María has total freedom just to choose what is the right content for the country, etc. But some of the content just burns after a meeting with María and I, just to choose what's the right thing just to share for the magazine, because it needs to have an ADN, a DNA, all across every edition. But we also perceive that it needs to have a very strong local hand, that in this case is María as I am in Spain. So it is at the same time very local and very international at the same time. So that's what we manage, how we share the stories, that some of them we share it, some of them we totally transform it to another angle. And that's what we are deciding to work this way. So very independent, but with a lot of dialogue at the same time.
And Maria, first issue, 324 pages, amazing brutalist houses, which I'm fascinated by. If you don't mind, I would love to talk about some of the content inside. I mean, the house on the cover is just magnificent. I mean, it's called Casa Bernal, right?
Yeah, by Emmanuel Picot.
What a fantastic place. I mean, this is a good start. This is a good first issue to have that on the cover.
Exactly. I mean, as you know, this brutalism is like, this architectural style has been used in a wide range of constructions, from houses and public buildings to stadiums, and shopping centers. And in Mexico, this style was being very popular during the 1960s and 1970s. And because the concrete was considered as a modern and economical material, in the country, nowadays we've been seeing a lot of projects with this neo-brutalism. So Emmanuel Picot is a great creative. He's from France. He's been living in Mexico for over more than 20 years. So he's been building this kind of personal projects all around Mexico. And this one is based in the center of Mexico in Querétaro. So it's been quite a great surprise for our readers, this project, because it mixes interior and exterior, and also, as you can see, the raw concrete, right? That it's like very imponent when you see all the nature around this project. So I think it's a very interesting project. Of course, I wanted to feature this on the cover, as it is like an architectural style very common nowadays. So that's it.
Well, and I think it's a beautiful house and a beautiful issue as well. And back to Enric, we're talking at the beginning of the interview how I feel the magazine is quite established, even though it's fairly new since 2022. But I wonder what's the trick here, Enric, because the magazine has many pages. You have amazing collaborations as well. Do you have any tip perhaps to give to those young people that perhaps want to create their own magazines? Because this is fantastic. I mean, after 2 years, it's still going strong. It's launching new products and even a new issue in Mexico.
I think there's a booming industry of independent magazines right now. I mean, we have too much to learn from each other because we've just launching more and more titles all across the world. First of all, you have to be very clear your point of view. So what you want to be. And I think the tone in which you address your readers is very important. The tone of the writing and the tone of the images. So it is sometimes very difficult to define what the tone should be, but you have to be very witty to your readers, and the writing, it's very important. You have never to forget the writing and how to choose the right title for the stories, to be like a happy person, like a very funny writings. I think that's all. And I mean, it doesn't care if you are a quarterly, if you're an annual magazine. So if you find the right keys to press in this sense, I mean, you're going to be successful for sure.
And Maria, I want to ask a question because our Stack listeners, they're very specific. And where can they buy Manera Mexico? I mean, I know, of course, it's available in Mexico, but can people buy online in case they're not in Mexico? I'm just asking because I know my listeners.
Okay, so currently, as we just launched the magazine, we are still working in some details in regards to the distribution. I mean, we are all around Mexico. We are in the most important market chains. I can mention Sanborns and City Market and Fresco. You can find us in Mérida, in Los Cabos, in Sayulita, all around Mexico. And in Mexico City, we are in a lot of boutique showrooms, design showrooms. Some of your readers know Casa Bosques, for example,
Yes.
Or have Libros. And then we have Selección Marsella, which is like a little boutique design showroom. And so we are still working on the online, the sales online. And also we are very keen to distribute the magazine in Colombia, in Peru, in Chile. We are just working on it, and we'll let you know when we are ready in the rest of the countries in Latin America.
Thank you very much, both Enric and Maria. Manera issue 8 is out now, and so is the first issue of Manera Mexico. Their second issue is coming out very soon. For more, go to maneramagazine.com. Okay, it is that time of the year where we like to check in with Josh Hickey and Filip Niedenthal, directly from the Greek island of Hydra. They both just published the second annual printed edition of the Journal of the Hydra Book Club. The title delves into the topics of literature, criticism, and image, and this time it is centered around the word vacation and its many meanings.
June is a very busy month, both for us and, the community of other writers, publishers, and artists and curators on the island. In fact, you're speaking to us on one of the more important weekends of the year. I often say that this weekend, which features the opening of the Destier Foundation, which is a very big contemporary art show, we launched the new issue of our Journal of Writing. The Old Carpet Factory launched their new book on the occasion of their 100 years. So this all happens on the same weekend. And I say, it's kind of like the same as a folk or religious or state holiday, because, all of Athens has descended, the art world has descended upon the island, and it's really festive. And, you really get this intense feeling of the community here and how, the different projects that the creative community are working on really interact with one another and support one another.
And it's funny, Josh, you mentioned, people coming over to the island from Athens. And I think that in a way, perhaps, Filip, I'll ask you, relates to the new issue of the Journal of the Hydra Book Club. Because last year, the theme was all about utopia. It was a beautiful edition, was super interesting, the very first one. But now there's a second one, and the theme is quite fun. It's vacation. So perhaps it talks about this transient island as well, because not everyone lives there, right? But they spend seasons there. So, Filip, I wonder, what can you tell us about this year's theme for the journal?
Well, the thing is that not everyone lives here, but also not everyone who comes here on vacation. And it is seen, whoever I speak to is like, oh, have a nice holiday. And I'm like, actually, I'm working. But it's a privilege to be able to work from a place like this and to be surrounded by these people who are inspiring and invigorating us. But we were just talking about the heat a few minutes ago, and we're all complaining how hot it is and how it's not very motivating to be up and about in this heat. But I think, that's one of the topics that we wanted to touch on in this issue, in vacation, is this idea of taking time off and enjoying the sunshine. It doesn't seem to be valid anymore. It doesn't seem to, or maybe valid is not the right word, but there are other aspects to this way of spending time, that we would like to discuss with our contributors.
How would you differ issue 1 to 2, Josh, in your view? Not only the difference in themes, but from what I can see, you have new contributors as well.
We do. I think that, just generally speaking, this print media project, is really a reflection of two things. First, it's this kind of model of Hydra, right, where since 100 years, there have been Greek and international intellectuals and artists mingling and working together on the island. And so we sort of mirror that in our choice of contributors. And it's also sort of a reflection of the way Filip and I interact with the world, because a lot of these people have come from different periods of our working or social lives. And so the way we construct the contributor list is very collaborative, and we're engaging with them around the theme. But for example, I always say this, and it's not to sound pompous, but only one person has said no to us so far. And that was for a very, sort of logical reason, because we do, these people, were pulling them from our community of collaborators in a larger sense. And so it's a real, it's Filip and I, sure, it's our project, but it really is a collective working on this. The difference is, between last issue and this one really is, first of all, the theme, obviously. I think, the first being a bit of an experiment, the first run of anything is a bit of a trial and error. And so we were able to see things that worked very well. We wanted to add a bit more image. We wanted to have a very diverse group of contributors as well. And I think that is pretty clear when you see the new issue. It's a bit thicker. Maybe it's a bit more solid in its delve into the idea of vacation.
All the contributors in this issue are different this time. There's no one, with the exception of one photographer who had a photo essay in the previous issue in Utopia. We invited him back with the images that he had shot of Hydra, and we created we call it a zine, it's a little booklet, pamphlet, whatever you want to call it, with just his images of the island. So that's the only returning contributor.
And it's interesting that the journal itself is being sold in quite a few shops around the world, definitely not just in Hydra. So how do you feel it's being received? Because it's being, here in London, we have some stockets for it as well. Is a consolidation of this kind of idea of Hydra as a cultural hub.
That's right. It sort of mirrors or repeats what I said just previously, in that, it allows us to interact with a larger group of people and to kind of express that ethos of Hydra life, which is this mix of Greek and international intellectuals. I think that it isn't, its name is one thing. And while it does reflect this ethos of Hydra, or this essence rather of Hydra, it also is not site specific. There are contributors that have a link to Hydra, but the majority do not. And so it's more of, let's say, an expression of a philosophy of Hydra than it is actual Hydra content. And so that allows it to, resonate with whomever buys it around the world, whether they have been here or not.
And Filip, I just want to ask, because the title is published by 77 Press as well, which is based in Warsaw. What can you tell us about how's it going here? Because I remember we spoke, I don't know, a year ago or a bit more. That was just brand new, but tell us how the publishing house is going.
Thank you for asking. Last time we spoke was just before the launch of a book called Winter Girl that I did with Małgosia, who is actually a resident of this island and is the reason that I started coming to this island, and that's how I met Josh. So she is very important to us both. And yeah, we talked in, I think it was September, and that has gone very well. The book is sold worldwide, and Małgosia has had a lot of press talking about this with all the different issues of Vogue and many other publications globally. My next project is also related to Hydra because thanks to Josh and the Hydra Book Club, I discovered the Australian writer Charmian Clift, who used to live here in the 1950s and wrote a beautiful book about her time here called Peel Me a Lotus. And I was able to buy the rights for Poland. I've just had it translated and it should be out within a month.
That's fantastic. So we have a lot of breaking news and coming up projects. And of course, Josh, I mean, the Hydra Book Club, it's still to open in September. And we all like the heat, of course. But let's be honest, September must be great to go to Hydra, right?
It's the best. It's funny because it does, it's sort of this weird idea, right? Where I have this bookstore that's open 2 months a year. It raises some eyebrows. It also creates a bit of frustration. We have friends, for example, with kids who've been coming here every summer forever. And, they've never been able to experience it or enjoy the book club because they go back to London or Paris or wherever for school. That said, it's a wonderful time of year, both for the weather, the sea, you can hike again, and it really brings a new crowd. The Athenians who often don't spend their summer vacation here, they come back. We're quite close to Athens. It's about an hour, less than 2 hours, let's say, from Athens. And so you get the Athenian art crowd that comes back. You get a lot of the homeowners who have rented their place in the summer to come back. The local friends that we have are more relaxed. They're less stressed out by the crowds and the sort of intensity of summer, and the weather cools slightly. And so I would highly recommend for you to visit us in September.
Thank you as always, Josh Hickey and Filip Niedenthal. For more information, go to their Instagram page @Hydra Book Club. And make a note, the Hydra Book Club will be back in the island from the 1st of September to the 27th of October. And now, what a beautiful coincidence. We stay in Hydra, this time to speak with another friendly face, Megan Wray Schertler from Verod Archive. She's the publisher of The Warp of Time, a limited edition art book published to accompany an exhibition in Hydra until September the 8th, telling the creative history of the old carpet factory building in the island. The book is a partnership with Sotsuglu Carpets, an old carpet factory recording studio, and it is made in a beautiful Leporello format. Megan tells me more.
I am here on Hydra at the moment to launch a new book that I've published. It's very exciting. It's called The Warp of Time. The book itself is really a kind of celebration and archive of the creative history of a building here on the island called the Old Carpet Factory. It's celebrating its 200th anniversary as a building here on the island. And originally, it actually was a place of carpet production. It now is run as a very active recording studio and artist residency. And so my collaborator on the project, who's curated an exhibition here on the island in the house as well, we just felt passionate that, we kind of really show how much the house has influenced, centuries of artists and creatives, and really also kind of unpack how a history can be documented, that it's not just a timeline, it's the inspirations, it's the emotions, it's the psychology of a place. And so the book, I feel, and I hope, really encapsulates that.
And I have to mention, you're talking to us, you are actually, in fact, at the Old Carpet Factory recording studio, because I can see a lot of kind of guitars and music instruments surrounding you. So that's quite a special place.
It's honestly such a magical house. The current owner, Stefan Colorado Mansfeld, is really passionate about collecting very rare and unique instruments. I won't dare try to talk about any of them in any technical quality. His kind of knowledge is just truly magnificent, and he's just so passionate. But I am literally talking to you now from the actual kind of recording space within the house. We had musicians here up until just a few days ago, and I believe he has another band coming in about a week or two. So it's a very active recording studio here on Hydra.
I've seen many great artists have been there. Sébastien Tellier, I think, and many others. So he has a lot of heritage in there. But Megan, tell us about the format of the book. I mean, it looks great, first of all, but there's like a special format, because I know the book talks about history and memory, and I think you try to represent that somehow in the book, right?
Yes, the format, I would say, is really integral to the project. So it was a very short turnaround. I actually met Ekaterina Zhukovsky, she runs the art residency here in the building, and she's the one who curated the show on the house here as well. I met her last November, and she was telling me how she really almost had just unearthed too much material for a show here in the house, and that she had ambitions to do a book. As she kind of learned, I, with my background, have a little bit of knowledge in publishing and kind of production. So we partnered on it. But as I really came to kind of understand her curatorial vision and the role that memory plays in defining a place's history, we decided together to use a Leporello format. So the book isn't spine bound. It's actually more of an accordion style for those who aren't familiar with the term. So when you open the book, on one side, you get the history of all of the different owners of the house. And then when you flip it over, you have all of these different memories submitted from artists, actually like Sébastien Tellier. We have a beautiful photo essay from when he recorded in the house. We have song sheets and lyrics that were written here. We have photo essays by photographers that have been inspired by their stay here. We have a wonderful essay by the visual artist Egil Sebjørnsen, which kind of talks about how he really sees the house actually as an alive being, and how he really feels that almost he's, kind of hanging out with another character when he's here. It's really quite charming and really lovely. So yeah, the format and the kind of style of a Leporello allows both the factual history and the more emotional memory to be in dialogue. So rather than having it by chapter, you literally kind of have the pages turning amongst themselves, and you can also pull the book out so it's meters upon meters long to actually see the full scape of the house and of the breadth of the people that have stayed here.
I love that. That's so beautiful. And I mean, and what about if somebody wants to purchase the book?
So the book was actually produced in a limited run of only 500 copies. And given the, hand-constructed nature of the Leporello format, we really see it more as an art object and less of a traditional exhibition catalog or even kind of an art coffee table book. So we were really passionate that we kind of place the book in a distribution sense in places where people can actually experience it or can kind of understand the format and the uniqueness of it before purchasing it or bringing it home. Within the 500 copies, there are two different slipcase covers, which the kind of main book is housed. One features a beautiful archival image that was unearthed during Ekaterina's research of the main living room, I would say almost ballroom-like proportioned space that kind of is the most iconic room in the house. And then the other cover features a new work produced by Helen Martin. So it was actually a watercolor by Helen inspired by Hydra, as she has spent many years here and has a long relationship with the island. And then Sutsosku Carpets, who are the original carpet producing family that would kind of make carpets here in the house over 100 years ago. They're still in operation, third generation family owned. They translated this watercolor into a tapestry, a hand-woven tapestry for the exhibition. So that work is featured on one of the two limited edition covers. Both covers or versions of the book will be available at the exhibition from now until the beginning of September. Additionally, The covers featuring Helen Martin's work will be available at Gagosian Shop online, and I believe also in some of their locations in New York. We also have a limited quantity of the Old Carpet Factory covers available at Hyper Hypo in Athens. For those who aren't familiar with the store, it's, I'd say, one of the best independent magazine and kind of art book or kind of independent bookstores in the world right now. I think, the two owners just have such a fantastic spirit and eye and are doing really great programming in the space. So we're very honored to have copies stocked there. And lastly, copies will also be available at Hydra Book Club later this summer.
And Megan, what's going on in Hydra? I mean, what a special island, what a strong connection they have with the world of literature, art. It is fascinating, right? I mean, and it's a long history. It's not just kind of a recent trend. I mean, so it's quite special in that sense.
It really is. And, I will admit, when I first came here a few years ago, I just knew it as, the island of Leonard Cohen kind of lore and the romance of it.
Which is great as well.
Which is great. I mean, that story is alone just so captivating and so fantastic and so inspiring. But upon spending more time here and getting to meet those that have based themselves here or been influenced by it, I've learned so much about its role in kind of trade from Venice, over to kind of places further east or just within Greece itself. Its long, kind of sponge fishing and drying economy, the way that carpet making came over from Turkey, actually from the Tsoutsoglou family, and created a whole microeconomy here on the island and then brought it to Greece. There's just so many kind of different, I think, intersections on this island because tourism has influenced it so greatly. So I think tourism now has amplified its ability to inspire and draw creative communities here. So really, anytime you go out for a coffee, you're constantly meeting painters from Nordic countries or writers from the Far East. It's such an international hub for being a really, really teeny island. And then not to mention, you have such a strong local Greek community of creatives and artists and artisans and craftsmen that really believe in, the quality of the materials to be found here and also just the beauty of the light and the natural environment. I mean, yeah, it's actually something I could just go on about because it's just endlessly inspiring here.
And Megan, I'm curious as well. I would love to hear more about your personal practice as well, because as I mentioned in the introduction, you've worked with many amazing magazines. Fantastic Man, right? That's how we met. You have CR Fashion Book Interview and many, many others. So give me some updates and tell us a bit more about your personal practice as well.
So I'm based in Berlin at the moment, really between Berlin and Reykjavik, quite a kind of diverse combination there.
Reykjavik, oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's been an interesting kind of addition to the mix. But, as you mentioned, my background really is in independent magazines. I've been a magazine obsessive since I was a kid. I had the great pleasure of working with Herten Jopp at Fantastic Man for several years. I then was at Document Journal working with Nick Vogelson. I helped relaunch Interview, was at CR for a bit. I was most recently the publishing director of Heist Nobiety. But really, my role has always been as the kind of behind the scenes, either publishing director or managing editor. I love being that facilitator. I loved thinking about, as everyone says magazines are dead, well, how can we ensure that they aren't? How can we create new business models, new structures, introduce them to new audiences? That's really where my passion lies. And so about a year ago, I went freelance and started my own practice, which I call Verld Archive. Verld is an Icelandic term, which the word world is derived from, but it means something physical spinning in time. And I like thinking about, the way that these objects, these printed objects, influence us in time. That's very different from just the production itself. And I work mainly with existing publishing houses to consult them on how to create more flexible business models, or, also with artists and creatives to help them create their own publishing branches of what they do. So something I'm quite passionate about is working with artists to make sure that they get to archive their work in a way that feels representative of their work and the worlds that they're creating. So it's been a really great ride. This book, The Warp of Time, is the first thing that I myself have kind of physically published rather than working with a creative. This is kind of my first, I'd say, physical offering in book format, which has also just, I mean, gosh, made it so much a personal celebration being here on Hydra. I mean, to launch my first book project on this island is like a dream upon a dream. It's just really, it's been wild. So in addition to this book project, and then going to New York next month to kind of work with some other creatives that are based there. And yeah, just hopefully always have the pleasure of working with amazing editor-in-chiefs and creative directors and helping them to do things in print for decades to come.
Thank you very much, Megan. For more information, go to oldcarpetfactory.com. And the book will also be available at the Gagosian shop in New York, ahead of Helen Marden's solo show in the city. And that's it for this week's show. My thanks to our editor, Jack Jewers. Any comments or queries, feel free to write to me, Fernando, at fbandmonocle.com. We're back next Saturday at 10 a.m. London time. Meanwhile, subscribe to the show on Apple Podcast or Spotify. You've been listening to The Stack. I'm Fernando Augusto Pacheco. Until next time, it's goodbye from me.